The post-apocalyptic vehicles of Mad Max. Am I right? Every single car you see in these films is repurposed and redesigned, and most of the time using parts from multiple cars to make one vehicle. And these cars, or motorcycles, are layered to the teeth with detail. Every car is unique and made to fit the rider's personality as well as their specific purpose out there on the Fury Road. When talking about the inspiration for the vehicles, the film's director George Miller went on to say that throughout history, no matter how impoverished the circumstances, there are always among us artisans and artists able to create a strong utilitarian aesthetic. The impulses which drove our Paleolithic ancestors to make exquisite cave paintings persist in the post-apocalyptic Blackfingers, also known as motor mechanics, and in the War Boys, scarifying themselves with sacramental body art. In that last bit, he's referring to the War Boys branding themselves with like auto parts. These are given to them over time after all the adventures out there on the Fury Road, and it's the way that they use their bodies to commemorate these vehicular treasures or religious artifacts. Basically just the cars that are part of the armada. Before he answers the call, Nux is refueling his blood the same way that you would refuel a car with gasoline. Miller and friends didn't simply see the vehicles as just like really cool things that go fast, but rather seeing them as living works of art. So you know what? Let's talk about them. Let's talk about all of them. And just for your benefit, I timestamped the whole freaking thing. And before we get into like all that, I think it's a good time to talk about today's sponsor, BetterHelp, as they're helping make this entire guide possible. For those of you who don't know, BetterHelp is a therapy service that is 100% online. BetterHelp is out here trying to make therapy more affordable and accessible. BetterHelp exists on your phone, and it gives you the ability to talk to your therapist over text, chat, video call, voice call, just whatever you feel comfortable with. So all you have to do to get started is answer this questionnaire talking about your needs and preferences in therapy. And then what they're gonna do is that they're gonna take the answers from that questionnaire, and then they're gonna look in their network of 30K, as in 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists. And then they're gonna pick the most compatible one for you. Once you're matched, you can contact your therapist whenever, any day of the week and any time of the day. But let's say you want to be more organized and efficient. You can schedule live sessions whenever it's convenient for you. And if you're finding out that your therapist isn't the right fit for you and that you're really not vibing with them, you have nothing to worry about, because you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. Like, they're not going to charge you anything for going like, switch me to someone else. With BetterHelp, this thing, you're getting more flexibility and you're getting a more affordable price than in-office therapy. So if you want to begin that journey with BetterHelp, what you got to do is you got to click on this link right here, this one in the description below. And what this link is going to do is that it's going to give you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. So go check it out for yourself. Great. Now into the hellscape. Let's start with the V8 Interceptor. The black 74X-speed Ford Falcon Coupe is the link between the myths, as it appeared in every single Mad Max film there is. It's a modified police car that was actually the same kind of police car that the Australian state of Victoria used at one point in time. The Interceptor was given to Max as a secret gift from Fifi McAfee in order to keep Max on the main force patrol so that Max could, you know, continue being a really good pursuit man or something. Fifi needed to keep Max on the road because he needed to keep the roads and highways safe. And just look at all the safety caused by Max. Look at how good of a job he is doing at keeping the people and even the criminals alive. I don't know how much this beast of a machine set Commissioner Labatush back, but in real life, the Interceptor cost around $35,000. If we go ahead and adjust that for inflation, it should come out to around $160,000, which is a good chunk of change. We get some Interceptor time in the Mad Max sequel, Road Warrior, but when the third installment came into town, the vehicle vanished from the face of the earth. But luckily, it came back in Fury Road, only to have it like completely destroyed in the first 5 seconds of the film. Apparently this stunt in Fury Road was so extreme that it required all hands on deck, like all of them, first and second unit. After the whole, Max is reluctantly introduced to Joe's Armada, and the first vehicle that really stands out to him is his own car. They renamed it to Razor Cola, most likely inspired by the fact that Joe refers to the water in the Aquafire as Aqua Cola. The War Boys replaced the broken fiberglass parts with steel. It's the same black 1974 XP Ford Falcon Coupe, except this time they added a whole bunch of stuff to it, like new weaponry, 4-wheel drive, a brand new chassis, a better engine, as well as adding a nice nice matte silver polish to it. And they added some personal touches to the vehicle as well, like the razor blades on the headlights and a steel skull above the V8. They also added a bunch of weapons to the back of it, including these explosives that will disconnect from the vehicle and deliver a very unwelcome surprise to whoever's following them. It's one of the many Caltrop vehicles that surround the war rig, meaning its job is to get ahead of the enemy and then release a bunch of spikes to take out their tires. The last time we see this vehicle is when Slit just ruins it. Production designer Colin Gibson went on to explain the approach and the mindset that they had when making the weapons on board any of these vehicles. I don't have a gunsmith, but I do have 3 guys who are plumbers and really want a gun. Then a piece of pipe, they trigger it, and have some way for something to come out the other end. So quite a lot of them were handmade from pipe. They were reused from different materials. Spray guns, jackhammers were all repurposed to use as guns, or flamethrowers. You'll notice that in terms of aesthetic, these cars are decorated with relics of the pre-fall world, items that no longer have any practical meaning to them, such as cuddly toys or circuit boards, as the war boys steal the childhoods of like everyone, and they don't have anyone left who knows how to work on a computer. Items like these are refashioned as ornaments and accessories. I don't know, these cars are weird. Heck, they don't even have airbags. They have crumble zones, which are areas of the car meant to absorb the impact, which just sounds like the normal body of a car. But most of the vehicle bodies in this Armada were designed to be weapons or battering rams, and some were even designed to explode. So yeah, I don't think a crumble zone is gonna help them. Oh, and look at that, we're already at my favorite vehicle. Imperator Furiosa's War Rig. The War Rig is a powerful 18-wheeled, 6-wheel drive truck that runs on twin V8 engines. Because what else would it be? The entire vehicle is painted black to make it look cool, but it was also done to help the vehicle not rust. The cabin of the vehicle is made up of a Czechoslovakian military vehicle known as the Tatra, paired with multiple other cars like a Volkswagen Beetle. The cabin itself has a Morangeau symbol hand-pressed into the roof like a lot of times. The key, or in this case the steering wheel, is going to have the same symbol, as is tradition in the Citadel. Except the steering wheel has a special wire-worked skull on it, and is wrapped in fine leather. Leather that may or may not be made from human skin. Colin Gibson asked Peter Pound if he would draw the skeleton arm on the driver's side door. A nice little nod to Furiosa's Ghost Limb. The concept art for the War Rig was originally created in 2001, and after years of debating the design, Peter Pound eventually made a 1:110 scale model of the War Rig and presented it to George Miller. And was like, this. And that convinced George Miller to go through with the design. I don't know where that scale model is at, but I need to get it. The War Rig is often referred to as the crown jewel of a Morin's Armada because this 6-wheel drive carries with it a huge cylindrical fuel tank that's attached to a small fuel pod. And these 2 storage containers are either loaded with milk, veggies, or water to trade with Bullet Farm for bullets or Gastown for gasoline. And because it's carrying precious cargo, this puppy, this vehicle, the one that we are currently discussing, has to be armored to the teeth. So there are an endless amount of weapons placed in holsters throughout the ship. There's even hidden weapons in places like the skulls lining the side of the vehicle, or the gear shift. The freaking gear shift turns into a blade if need be. We got weapons anywhere and everywhere. It's kind of like a pirate ship because they're always prepared to be boarded by other pirates. A massive amount of Fury Road takes place on, within, or around this vehicle. Charlize Theron, the original actor playing Furiosa, went on to say that when filming in the cabin, you're limited to space. And you're limited to not just space for the actors, but space for cameras. I think it could be very frustrating to a lot of people. But to George, it's in the challenge of all of that. It's almost what he thrives in, and that's when he comes alive. And I know some of you may be thinking, isn't the Fury Road War Rig a massive downgrade in comparison to the OG War Rig? Well, yeah, the original one was operated by Praetorian Jack, and it was refashioned from a Kenworth W900 series that was caked in stainless steel. It has 2 cranes, which is 2 more cranes than the Fury Road one. The original also had these panels that would fold out and reveal thunder sticks. They'd also serve as a platform for war boys to hop on and then throw those thunder sticks. On top of all of these upgrades, we got a sliding mechanism that can take you from one end of the War Rig to the other very quickly. And I'm not even done ranting yet. They also have the Bomby Knocker, which is made up of 3 flail-like balls attached to chains that are connected to this one wheel that when activated spin violently to take care of those pesky motorcycle gangs. But you know what, at the end of the day, both vehicles had harpoon guns, so at least there's that. Concept artist Mark Sexton claims that when it comes to the other cars carrying harpoons, the harpoon vehicles act more as anchors. So the idea was that they would attach themselves to larger vehicles in order to slow them down, because vehicles like the War Rig are so bloody powerful. The only way that you could do it would be by attaching harpoons into the opposing vehicle. They have these big, ridiculous contraptions at the back that are just giant rakes or giant anchors, and they dig into the earth behind the claw car. This provides a counterforce, so the vehicle is then being dragged backward, and the force of the claws digging through the earth slow down the vehicle. Remember the claw cars that we were just talking about? Well, one of them is a heavy Ford F-250 low truck with large front digger claws, rakes, and anchors. And this 1961 Holden EK Special Station Wagon basically has the same kind of thing going on. It's equipped with a large harpoon gun mounted to the front and hydraulic plows attached to the back. They all essentially look like a tow truck that you would see when you're having a really bad day. Which brings us to the pursuit vehicles, the vehicles who follow and help protect the rig. These vehicles vary from sports bikes and choppers to cars like the Valiant, 1962 Plymouth Valiant with a Chrysler Slant 6 engine. It's a good car. Don't get me wrong, it's like a really good car, but it lacked the climbing capabilities of something like the Cranky Black or the 6-foot. Can we just talk about the Cranky Black for a second? That 1930 something Chevrolet Hot Rod had a rear mounted turbo aspirated V8, meaning that thing could fly. But the lack of mountain climbing capabilities on something like the Valiant is actually what ended up severely slowing down Furiosa and Jack, to the point where Dementis was able to catch up to them in the 6-foot. Some of the pursuit vehicles consist of repurposed main force patrol vehicles, similar to the Interceptor, or just the Interceptor, but most of the Armada, including cars from Gastown and the Bullet Farm, consist of mostly muscle cars. Like we got Cranky Frank, also known as Holden FJ Utility, the Nissan Skyline R32, and the Parenti. And the other vehicles that can be seen really far in the background would be this 1950 Chevrolet Utility, a 1971 Dodge Charger, and you guessed it, a 1964 Mini Coupe S, aka the Mini. Oh, and one of my favorite vehicles would be this Ford F100 pickup truck that was also known as the Tire Medic. I feel like that name is pretty self-explanatory. This car would stay in front of the War Rig and sort of act as a spotter. It was a 1932 Ford 3-window coupe, which was appropriately named the Elvis. They would also have cars like the Volkswagen Type 1 FDK. It was originally KDF, but because the car is atrocious in terms of the way that it runs, they changed it to FDK. The KDF stands for Kraft durch Freude, and the German translation of that is strength through joy, which would sound nice in any other context. The 1934 Chevrolet 5-window coupe, also known as Nux's Hot Rod, was designed to fit his personality. He's someone who is more youthful and innocent than the other war boys, which is why he has a steering wheel with a baby doll face on it. Here's the original concept art of what the design of his car looked like back in the 90s. And here's the end result. I love these small details that you can see on Nux's car, like the flames on the exhaust pipe, or the dentures on the gear stick, or the fact that the entire thing is designed to blow up at one point. Because witness me, when it comes to cars pursuing the War Rig, that's when things get more intense, especially with the Buzzards. All my thoughts of moving to a tornado-prone state because the cost of living is really inexpensive there. The Buzzards. Brendan McCarthy goes on to explain the thinking behind these spike-covered nightmares. These are vehicles that come out of tunnels in the ground, and they attack the convoy with buzzsaws, which just move across, slashing up tires and people's legs. All nasty stuff. Living in Australia, I had started thinking about the outback, at things like thorny-backed lizards that had lots of spikes on them. When the excavator Death enters the Namibian desert, you best watch yourself. The Buzzard excavator is a manned 6x6 tractor, which has approximately 1,757 rusty spikes on it, because as a Buzzard, you can't have too many spikes. There's no such thing. They will literally put spikes on everything. And I mean everything. The most iconic Buzzard would be this 1937 Plymouth sedan, but it's barely recognizable after its makeover. Instead, it looks more like a creature, like the lizard that McCarthy was talking about. Apparently this 1940 Hillman was a Buzzard, but they never used it in the film. And I'm assuming it's because it didn't have as much rusty spikes as they needed it to have. Because out of all of the factions in the Wasteland, the Buzzards were supposed to be the most animalistic. The Buzzard population suffers from this severe skin condition. It basically causes their skin to fall off of their bodies, so they have to hold their skin back to said bodies with saran wrap and bandages. It's just not a good time. And in order to avoid the dry, hot Australian desert, which would make their skin condition so much worse than it already is, they hide inside these spiky vehicles. Rusty, spiky vehicles that are constantly falling apart as well. The lack of moisturizer is why we don't really see a lot of the Buzzards in person during the chase. Most of the time they stay in their vehicles. Their strategy is to basically use these buzz saws to cut the tires of their enemies. And then once their enemy is stalled out and parked, they circle back around and then plow through them. The design team picked around 1,757 spikes for the excavator because they wanted to give the excavator as many spikes as the average number of quills found on Australian anteaters. If they see a vehicle where there's little to no spikes, they take a second to look at it and then they're like, you know what, not enough. Then they take it to this parking garage in the Underdune to just slap even more rusty spikes on there. My favorite chase in the franchise would have to be between the War Rig and the Buzzards. And every time I watch it, I ask myself the same question. How did no one die while making this? Rictus, the human garbage's vehicle, is the Bigfoot. With the Bigfoot, we're talking 66-inch all-terrain tires with heavy axles from military super tankers. We're talking a 4-foot suspended Fargo truck from the 1940s accompanied by a supercharged V8 engine. I definitely understand like half of these words. The bow on top of this monster truck is the belt-driven machine gun paired with a harpoon gun. The big wheels on this vehicle scream overkill. And honestly, they don't really do anything special in the Namibian sand, but they are amazing at getting over large rocks. This 1948 Buick Special 4-door sedan was mainly used to guard the Bigfoot and the Gigahorse. Before that, the Buick served as something that would carry the polecats, which is why it has a wider wheelbase on the back. We finally arrived. The Gigahorse. This is Brendan McCarthy's 1997 concept art of a Morton Joe's Gigahorse. What it could have looked like. Except at this point, it was referred to as the Warlord Chariot. Later on, Colin Gibson and friends wanted to make the Gigahorse something that would put the Interceptor to shame. They wanted you to look at the Gigahorse and go like, wow, don't need this thing anymore. May as well throw that in the trash and burn it. They wanted the Gigahorse to be the new icon of the Mad Max series. In the year 2001, Peter Pound worked on the new design of the Gigahorse by making it have a 1959 Cadillac body. Then in 2003, Gibson and Aaron Beck were goofing around and were like, hey, we like the 1959 Cadillac. It's pretty neat. But you know what would be even neater? 59 Cadillacs. And the rest is history. And they didn't just stop at the twin Cadillacs. No, Donnie. They added a real V16 twin engine, as well as 2-meter high double wide wheels and jacked up fins along its side and rear. The twin Cadillacs were supposedly needed to supply a large enough cabin to move around in, similar to something like the cabin that you'd find on the War Rig. This was done to make that last scene where Max is saving Furiosa feel not entirely claustrophobic, but the twin Cadillacs are supposed to look like two cars getting it on, which is indicative of Joe's awful mindset and his drive to repopulate the world. Completely on his own. I think they did a phenomenal job at making the Gigahorse iconic, but I'm sorry when I say that nothing is going to be more iconic in the Mad Max series than this. The Doof Wagon, also known as a man cat. This guy consists of 4 masked drummers, 4 drums, 8 drumsticks, 1 flamethrower guitar hybrid, a slightly blind and slightly deaf doof warrior strapped in with bungee cords, and an entire wall of speakers, air conditioning ducts, and subwoofers. Apparently the people at Warner Brothers referred to the Doof Wagon as Sonic Carmageddon. The Doof Wagon is able to move all this product, all thanks to a mighty supercharged V8 engine. The Doof Wagon seems pointless and just the sheer definition of excess. which it is. However, the Doof Wagon serves a practical purpose, as the music is used to signal to the war boys Morin Joe's orders, letting everyone in the armada know what they should do next. So they have to have this wall of speakers that makes the Doof warrior deaf, because they need something to overpower the sound of all these V8 engines. Oh boy, here we go. The People Eater's Limousine, also known as the AM General M814 cargo truck with a Mercedes-Benz W123 limousine body. It's a vehicle that the People Eater can't get into by himself. When coming up with the idea of the limousine, Colin Gibson claims that I'd read a story about what this vehicle has to do, and then we'd say that the driver was enamored of the People Eater. So the People Eater's giant Mercedes fracking truck was a giant shark through the desert, and therefore it should have lampreys to travel with it. And so the shiny Volkswagen flamethrower became a junior besotted love that traveled with it, darting around the side, etc. This stretch Mercedes-Benz comes with lattice cut windows, and of course a double-barreled flamethrower, because, you know, that's a given. I think I was a little bit too rough on the Doofmobile, because this puppy, this eyesore, is the epitome of excess, especially with the extravagant exhaust pipes and the car grills on top of car grills on top of car grills on top of car. Don't even get me started on the polished silver finish. The Bullet Farmer rides or dies in the Peacemaker, a Valiant chassis from the 70s that's blended with a US Ripsaw tank. It must be paying homage to his whole life in the pre-fall world, as he served in the military with his friend Morin Joe. This tank, but like not a tank, is powered by a water-cooled Merlin V8 engine, and is stocked with like every weapon known to man, because it's the Bullet Farmer, and it even comes with a freaking torpedo. I know most of you may be like, B-Rice, where the heck are the motorcycles? You know, and that's actually a really good point. The fabric on the Vuvellini's outfits is stretched over fishing pole frames. They do this so they can fold their clothing over their heads to either provide shade from the sun while they're driving or fold it into shelter while they're sleeping. And that kind of ingenuity is reflected in their motorcycles. Like this 2010 Yamaha R1. You can see how they use this part at the back of the motorcycle to provide this same kind of shelter that they find in their clothing. In Furiosa Mad Max Saga, we see that earlier Vuvellini rode on horseback, but all those horses died. So they went on ahead and attached the horse saddles to their bikes. And this also explains why the overall aesthetic of the ride is made to look like it's from a horse ranch. And for those of you asking yourselves, why did he just make a video talking about the vehicles in Fury Road, not the other movies? Well, I'm definitely willing to make a car guide to Furiosa Mad Max Saga. Just let me know. And thank you so very much to all the crew members on board USS Bryce. You good people are helping keep this channel going, and you're also helping make this video possible. So you guys are pretty incredible. And yeah, I guess that's it for the video.